It was a time of terror. As the dawn of the atomic age cast its dark shadow across the Earth, a superstructure was built in response, a construction so strong it could survive a nuclear blast. So powerful its electronic eyes reached 37 kilometers into space. 700 tons of dynamite ripped 23,000 truckloads of solid granite from the heart of a mountain to create an underground fortress of unprecedented size. Hidden deep within the Earth, this high-tech sentinel guards American skies against attack. This is the secret world of NORAD. Cheyenne Mountain, a rugged rocky mountain peak rising boldly from America's vast central plains, just a few kilometers from the town of Colorado Springs. Deep within its 100-million-year-old granite heart lies one of mankind's most remarkable superstructures, a citadel of stone, steel, and microchips. Men and women maintain a second-by-second vigil over the skies around the world, looking for any signs that could be the beginning of an attack on North America.
Exercise quick alert! Open up checklist 101-112.
Sir, we got an unknown in the system.
Radar picks up an unidentified object in the skies over central Russia.
DST is reporting an Eastern quick alert from Plesetsk, Russia.
It's traveling fast and heading towards the Pacific Ocean.
Stand by for possible missile event.
CD copies. Intel, what is your analysis?
A prompt response is vital to the defense of the nation. Highly trained teams scan intelligence reports to establish the correct action to take.
Sir, Intel assesses this to be the scheduled launch of an ICBM from Plesetsk with impact expected at the Kamchatka Peninsula.
And Intel assesses this as troop training.
Although it's a scenario that has been played out many times before, the staff on duty know that a moment like this could be the one that puts them to the ultimate test.
Troop training. NORAD U.S. Space Complete recommend we terminate this conference.
This is the headquarters of the North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD. Members of the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and the Canadian Armed Forces staff the NORAD operations centers. They work under the cover of a superstructure whose design and construction are as incredible as its high-tech capabilities. In a virtual world of computers, remote sensors, and speed-of-light telecommunications, they stand watch over the North American continent, constantly scanning instantaneous data transmissions from a vast network of sensors on land, at sea, and in space. NORAD's eyes can not only see the entire surface of the Earth, they also gaze 37,000 kilometers up into the heavens, where they probe 43 trillion cubic kilometers of aerospace. NORAD personnel consider all airspace for 190 kilometers around the outer border of the United States and Canada critical to national security. It's called the Outer Identification Zone. NORAD must know the purpose of every aircraft there.
And as soon as an aircraft crosses the outer identification zone, we start a 2-minute clicker. So we've got to figure out who that track is within 2 minutes. And if we can't figure out who it is, or there's no way to correlate that with an FAA flight plan, we declare the track unknown, and that's when we scramble interceptors and go out and figure out who that is by putting eyes on the target.
Yes, sir. I just want to let you know that we have an unknown over Canada right now.
On a given day, we have anywhere from 6,500 to 7,200 tracks. And we provide identification of every aircraft coming into North America. And that is a pretty sizable task given the fact that about 2.5 million tracks come into North America every year.
Cheyenne Mountain's labyrinth conceals NORAD's military wonders. Its existence has always been well known, as has its tracking capabilities, but its methods have always been top secret. How this superstructure came to be carved out of the inside of a mountain is one of the great feats of engineering history. 15 ingeniously constructed steel plate buildings house the command centers and the infrastructure that supports them through the endless hours of NORAD's vigilance. Stores of water, food, fuel, and a sophisticated air cleaning system provide life support for the complex. It can completely seal itself off from the outside world for more than 30 days.
Well, the first time I got here, I was lost. I really didn't know where I was going when you wander around because it's a pretty complicated complex inside. It's hard for people to imagine all the different levels of, different floors and different buildings that are here, and it's pretty overwhelming at first, but there's just a real sense of awe because the design is incredible. When you come into the large tunnel and through the blast doors and just realize what this was meant to survive, any kind of an attack during the Cold War. And the engineering behind it is just amazing to me still.
Getting all the technology inside a mountain presented new engineering challenges. The builders carved 350,000 cubic meters of hard rock from the core of the mountain and replaced it with 7,000 tons of steel, vast quantities of concrete and cabling. But why was it necessary to hollow out a mountain and build this amazing superstructure? The threat of nuclear attack. At the end of World War II, the United States dropped the newly developed atom bomb on Japan. The new atomic age had begun, and with it came the fear of Armageddon. Could anything survive this unparalleled destructive force? To have any chance of winning an unthinkable war, America had to build a command center that could withstand the force of an atomic explosion. With the constant threat of a military strike against America, NORAD was created, the North American Aerospace Defense Command Center. At the beginning of the nuclear age, the technology to build a working city deep within a mountain which was strong enough to endure a nuclear blast didn't exist. No one knew how many problems engineers would face, or how innovative they would have to be to solve them. The call went out to America's most talented engineers, challenging them to create something totally new.
In fall of 1958, I received a call to go to Omaha to meet with the Corps of Engineers to discuss a project. And that's how it all began for me.
I didn't know anything about Colorado Springs, didn't know anything about NORAD at that time.
In the late 1950s, Tom Kiesel and Steve Greenfield were young engineers with the New York firm of Parsons Brinckerhoff. Greenfield had proved his skills on some of his company's toughest projects. He specialized in hardened underground defense facilities, and his work was often highly classified. Kiesel was more of a specialist in tunnel design and bridges. He brought innovative solutions to engineering problems. But nothing they had done prepared them for the mysterious top-secret project of engineering North America's survival. The young engineers and their colleagues were given an unprecedented task: to design and build, quickly and economically, a fortress that could survive the effects of a nuclear blast. For the first time in history, there was a weapon that could destroy the entire human race, a weapon that was also in the hands of America's enemy. In 1949, the Soviet Union detonated a nuclear device. Soviet bombers armed with nuclear weapons were capable of striking North American cities. The nuclear superpowers settled into what became known as the Cold War, a permanent state of confrontation that could instantly turn volatile.
When I was in the regular military, we had very regular military training for the future war against Americans.
Colonel Stanislav Lunev is the highest-ranking Russian military intelligence officer ever to defect. He is currently in the Federal Witness Protection Program.
And I didn't know any other life than to live inside Cold War. We consider all this peacetime as some kind of break, which we have to train ourselves for the future war. Only break, peace break, that's all.
In America, the Soviet threat gave birth to a massive campaign called civil defense.
You know how bad sunburn can feel. The atomic bomb flash could burn you worse than a terrible sunburn.
There was a turtle by the name of Bert.
While the public was bombarded with civil defense training films, federal and local authorities built shelters and tried to prepare for the worst.
Where we would hire architect engineering firms to go out and identify existing shelters in existing buildings, hallways, and then put up signs that this is a fallout shelter, and then eventually put in provisions, food and water, so that you could spend some time there till the fallout decayed enough to where it was safe to go outside.
This shelter is a real good idea. If we should ever have a nuclear war, we could get a heavy fallout even though we were not anywhere near the target area.
Hey, isn't this nice?
The American public became paranoid, gripped with the fear of Soviet attack. They wondered how much protection the civil defense really could offer against a nuclear onslaught. The key to survival was to detect and stop an attack before it came. In 1957, Canada and the United States formed the North American Air Defense Command, or NORAD, designed to watch over the continent and act as an early warning system against attack by the Soviet Union. To detect incoming bombers, Canada and America cooperated to build a series of radar outposts across the far north. The Dew, Mid-Canada and Pine Tree lines provided early warning of enemy attack over the North Pole, but the new defense system suffered from a fatal flaw. NORAD headquarters was an old hospital building, a masonry structure built in the 1920s. A direct hit from a conventional bomb would raze it to the ground. A nuclear attack would turn it to dust. In 1956, the Continental Air Defense Commander reported that a man with a bazooka passing in a car could put the establishment out of commission. To fight its Cold War with Russia, America had to build something previously unimagined, a hardened command center that could survive the devastating power of an atomic bomb. The first design followed the plan of the Strategic Air Command headquarters at Omaha, Nebraska. The plan combined an above-ground headquarters with an underground combat operations center. But defense planners protested that the design was too vulnerable for a facility as important as NORAD headquarters. The RAND Corporation, a defense think tank, recommended locating the base underground and, if possible, within a granite mountain. Military engineers combed the front range of Colorado's Rocky Mountains in search of a suitable site.
The site was eventually chosen in Cheyenne Mountain, south of Colorado Springs, which is a great big blob of granite. And it was chosen because it was the hardest and strongest rock around.
Besides its granite core, several factors attracted NORAD designers to Cheyenne Mountain. It was near the geographic center of North America, far from Soviet strategic bombers, in a relatively inactive geological region and near an existing military base at Fort Carson, Colorado. The engineers had their site. Their next challenge was to carve a massive structure out of solid granite. Hard rock miners had the technology, but no one had ever tried a project of this scale before.
The whole concept of this structure was to create a series of caverns 1,500 feet under the surface of the mountain. And they were kind of like an egg crate. There were 3 galleries that went in one direction and 3 that crossed them. So there were intersections where the 2 galleries came together.
Work on the massive caverns began in June 1961. the miners made quick progress. In only 1 year, they blasted loose and hauled away 450,000 tons of granite. But suddenly, their work took on a desperate urgency. In the autumn of 1962, the fine balance of power rocked as America found a new threat directly off the Florida coast. Aerial photographs revealed that the Russians had placed missiles capable of carrying powerful nuclear warheads on the island of Cuba, only 145 kilometers from American soil. The world teetered on the brink of a nuclear catastrophe.
We were redeployed to the reserve position very deep in the mountains from our permanent location and received weapons, ammunition, gas mask, special clothes for the protection against radiation and all other stuff. It was good luck of our mankind that we had the chance to avoid this war.
After 13 days of tense negotiations, the Soviets withdrew their missiles from Cuba. Tempers cooled, but the arms race continued to escalate. In the wake of the Cuban Missile Crisis, work proceeded on NORAD with an even greater sense of purpose. The project was put on what was called a wartime construction schedule. It was to be completed as soon as possible. Everyone involved with the project knew what was at stake. The work continued at a furious pace.
Hey, good one, Carl. Finally.
These golfers are friends. They're also the architects of America's most important and protected military installation. In the 1960s, they were the rising stars of the Army Corps of Engineers, charged with the seemingly impossible task of building a nuclear bomb-proof NORAD.
It was an elite group of, what we considered ourselves elite at least, group of people that were good structural, electrical, mechanical engineers that were giving super challenging problems.
As far as I know, there were no projects designed to withstand the effects of a nuclear explosion.
The most important requirement of the underground facility was its ability to survive a nuclear blast. Before work began, geologists and soils engineers drilled test holes to discover if the rock would support the enormous cavern that needed to be hollowed out of the belly of the mountain. The military engineers had plenty of experience in underground tunnels and mines, but blasting a hole inside Cheyenne Mountain would be like no mining project ever conceived.